There's always a risk in talking about people that you take issue with in the sense that you could give them more oxygen and publicity, which in this case I think they want. On the other hand, I think it is important to provide counter arguments, and in this case I think it's very valid. So just to balance out some of the pro kneecap um, publicity that's out there. Um, so I'm referring to the Irish rap trio. They're from Northern Ireland, but they identify as Irish, so I'm going to call them Irish for the sake of this video. Um, and they've attracted a lot of notoriety for their stage uh, ideology for some of the things they've come out with. I will just say right now, I have no respect for Kneecap. I don't think that they're heroes. I don't think that they're good guys. I don't think they're um, principled individuals standing up against the system. I think they are sectarian bigots, shock jocks, hypocrites, and cards. And I'll back up everything I've said as to why I believe that to be the case. I just have no respect for them. And I think that they're getting far too much attention. So um, it's been decided that the BBC won't broadcast their Glastonbury performance, but it looks like the performance will probably go ahead. So I guess that's a 50-50 situation. I personally think there's a strong case that they shouldn't be allowed to get their royalties in the UK, which is a country that they hate. Um, I just think it's massively hypocritical of them. You know, they demand to get free platforms, they demand to make their money here. And I imagine I don't know quite how it works, but I imagine having a headline gig at Glastonbury would be pretty lucrative. So they're demanding to get all these performances in venues across Great Britain, and yet they hate this country. They're Irish nationalists. One of them wears an IRA-esque balaclava. I just think it's totally hypocritical to demand to get platforms from a country that you hate. It's ridiculous. Um, so that's the first thing. Now, regarding this situation with Glastonbury, the Prime Minister was asked about it, and he said that no, he doesn't think they should perform. He was also careful not to go too far into it, but he mentioned that the court case was ongoing. That's a typical Starmer diplomatic answer, which honestly is probably the only thing he could have said. Uh, but the interesting thing is that politicians across the board have criticised Kneecap. This isn't just the government. This isn't just like Labour or Tory. This is politicians across the board. And the thing to remember about Kneecap is when they spoke about killing Tory MPs, and they did, that's incitement to violence. Um, that wasn't just an insult aimed at Conservatives. Remember, the widower of Joe Cox heard that. Um, MPs get threatened all the time. Now, I think people should have the right to passionately disagree with MPs, to peacefully protest against them, to condemn them, etc., etc. But when you advocate violence, you're crossing a line. And this is the thing that really aggravates me about kneecapped apologists. And I see there's these musicians lining up to support them. Like Johnny Marr of the Smiths said, oppression fears artistic expression. It's very poetic, but it doesn't quite show the whole picture because he's talking about oppression. Well, they support Hezbollah and Hamas. Now, this is an interesting thing. I would challenge left-wing celebrities who support Kneecap. Hezbollah and Hamas are violent, homophobic organizations, and whatever you feel about Israel and the Palestinian situation, how can you justify supporting that? It's a bit hypocritical to say the least. One of those that signed a petition in support of NACAP is Rock Against Racism. I mean, I think their title is Music Against Racism, but that's just, you claim to be against racism, but you support anti-British bigots. So again, it's this cherry picking of racism we get with the left, um, or a certain segment of the left, I should say. Primal Scream have signed the petition, others have. I think a lot of musicians that are going to Glastonbury. Here's something I wonder about. Maybe if there's musicians out there who actually are a bit uneasy about Kneecap and don't really like their ideology, would they have the freedom of speech to say so? Would they have the freedom of speech to say, well, wait a second, do we want to be seen to be supporting a group that promotes sectarianism, that promotes terrorist organizations? I'm not sure that they'll have much of a choice because it's this idea of artistic solidarity. Um, so I think that in many cases they genuinely support Kneecap, but I also think it's a bit of shock value. Like we just want to be rebellious. It's all about free speech, and the thing about free speech, it does have the caveat that you cannot incite violence. That's reasonable. And Johnny Marr, Primal Scream, and the rest of them, I challenge them to, to justify their stance to the victims of Hezbollah and Hamas, including Palestinians and Lebanese. Um, I just think you can support the Palestinians, you can oppose Israel without being an idiot, without supporting these vile organizations. I mean, I have been increasingly vocal about Israel. No one can say I'm sitting here as an Israel apologist because I've been very forceful recently in my condemnation of Israel. I've said this country should immediately stop arming Israel. I support peaceful protests against Israel. Um, and I think what Israel's doing is an abomination. There's 51 Palestinians killed in the latest assault. In fact, it's probably even higher than that. I've heard people say Kneecap aren't the story, the Palestinians are. Okay, well then don't make Kneecap the story. Focus on the Palestinians. But by holding up Kneecap as some sort of heroes, you are making them the story. You're glorifying them. I'm sick of hearing about them. And as if it doesn't need to be pointed out, um, their name represents the ugliest aspects of Ulster sectarianism. To kneecap someone was what the paramilitaries used against alleged informers on both sides, but particularly the nationalist side. It was a particularly brutal punishment. Um, what does that say about their ethos? They would name themselves after that particular form of punishment. I'm sure it's just for shock's sake. I don't think they actually want to kneecap people. I'm not naive, but to me that says where their ethics are. Um, they're just shock jocks. And another issue I have with kneecap, I think they're actually cards because someone who's truly principled would take accountability of their actions. Mo Chara, who was the member who was charged at Westminster Magistrates Court on terrorism related offences, he held up the flag of Hezbollah and he clearly said at the gig in Kentish Town last November, up Hezbollah, up Hamas. If that is not supporting Hezbollah and Hamas, then what is it? And what I find really um, obnoxious is the fact he won't take responsibility for it. He's a card. He hides behind his balaclava. He won't take responsibility for his actions. He's not a hero. He's a card. And those who are defending him, my challenge to them is why won't he be principled? If he really supports Hezbollah and Hamas, which he does, then let him say so. And let him face these charges. But if he believes that they're not terrorist organisations, if he thinks they're freedom fighters, let him say so. I think what's happened is he ran his mouth. He knew he made a mistake, not from moral grounds. He just knew he got exposed, and he won't take responsibility for it. The guy's a card. I don't think it's heroic to cheer for an organisation that murders children. That violently attacks gay people. Um, so I am so sick of Kneecap being held up as some sort of principled pacifists. They're not. They support violent organisations. And they keep worming their way out of it. After their call to murder MPs, they said they would be happy to meet the relatives of those MPs who have been murdered. But what are they going to say? Oh, we didn't really mean it. I just think these guys are not the heroes they're being made out to be. There's a lot of people who deserve credit for standing up for the Palestinians. There's a lot of charities out there who actually go to the Gaza Strip, do very difficult work, very difficult circumstances. They deserve a lot more credit than Kneecap. As far as I'm concerned, Kneecap are entitled celebrities. I mean, I'm reluctant to call them celebrities, but I guess at this point they are. They're famous, um, or infamous, but they're entitled. They say, give us a platform. We're going to spew out hate and venom, but give us a platform anyway, because hey, it's free speech. Um, I am so sick of people who think that free speech means you can be absolutely as obnoxious as you want without taking accountability for it. To me, free speech means you can speak up for your conviction, that you can say basically what you want within reason, within the reason of not inciting violence. Inciting violence crosses a line. That should not be an accepted part of free speech. Why? Because it directly endangers others. That's taken away the freedom of others. So Primal Scream, the Smiths, all you other artists out there who are supporting Kneecap, fuck you. You know, I know you think you're being edgy. I know you think you're giving two fingers to the system. All the rest of it, you know, these are middle-aged men in many cases who've never really grown up. It's just, I just find it really sad. I mean, if Kneecap really want to support the Palestinian cause, they could. They could highlight the issue of Palestinian children. They could highlight um, all the bad things that are happening out there. People will say, oh, they probably do. But they also support terrorist organizations. To me, that undermines the cause. And it's one reason why I have not joined any pro Palestinian demos, because whilst it would be wrong to say everyone in those demos supports terrorist groups, they don't. It's also true that they haven't sufficiently reined in on those who do. In far too many of those demonstrations from the very start of this latest conflict, since October the 7th, there's been people who have been cheerleaders for Hezbollah and Hamas. Now, um, it's true that on the other side, pro-Israelis are completely blind to the things Israel's doing, and they're shamefully still defending it. I think it's appalling that the likes of the Daily Telegraph have utterly failed to call out Israel's excesses. Um, and absolutely, the pro-Israel lobby is utterly biased, and they're also hypocritical. Because they preach about the deaths of Israeli civilians, they don't give a damn about the deaths of Palestinian civilians. So, you know, in no way do I want to defend their dogma either. But when it comes to this conflict, it would be wrong to talk about neutrality because it's not a 50-50 situation. But in terms of the morality of it, my position is I am against the murder of civilians, whether it be Israel killing civilians in airstrikes or these groups killing civilians with missiles. Um, I see no moral difference. A lot of pro-Palestinians condemn Israel, but they will not condemn Hezbollah and Hamas. And likewise, a lot of pro Israelis condemn those groups, but they refuse to condemn every time Israel does it. Oh, well, it's collateral damage, it's a mistake. And they always take IDF claims at face value because the IDF always has an excuse. Um, so, go wrap this up, but it's, you know, it's difficult in a way to speak out against this because we hear this narrative that Kneecap are the underdogs are being trodden on. This country, if anything, is far too tolerant of those who are against us. I mean, they make out that Kneecap's being put down, they're being oppressed. It's they're not being punished for the views on the Palestinians. There's many people who have views on the Palestinians. They're being held to account because they've glorified terrorist organizations that are prescribed in this country. So anyone who's claiming they're being silenced because they support the Palestinians, that is a lie. It's a distortion. It's absolutely not what's happening. You know, you cannot hold up the flag of a terrorist organization at a public event with hundreds, if not thousands, of people and then expect nothing to happen. It's just brainless. Um, I don't know what the outcome of that trial was. But let's be clear, Mo Chara isn't going to go to prison for years. He's not going to be a political prisoner. He's just a mouthy left wing celebrity who thinks that he's being radical by taking these stances. As far as I'm concerned, Like the other two members of Kneecap, he's just an obnoxious hypocrite bigot. Um, they hate the UK, they want to perform here. They claim they don't support terrorism when they blatantly have. I don't think they're principled at all. I think they just like to shock. I think they probably are genuinely angry about the Palestinian situation. But the way they're going about it is, to me, it carries no respect at all. I have far more respect for UNICEF, for aid workers out there, doctors working in incredibly difficult circumstances at risk from Israeli missiles. Um, I will continue to condemn Israel. I'm no Israel apologist here, but I think it's unfortunate that people are propping up Kneecap to be somehow the poster boy for the pro-Palestinian cause. I think it's a serious mistake. You know, responsible pro-Palestinians should not be endorsing Kneecap just because they're on the same side. Why? Because of the reasons I've said. And this call for violence against MPs, how does that relate to MPs who support the Palestinian cause, such as the two Labour MPs who were arrested by Israel recently? When Kneecap advocates violence against MPs, they can cherry pick and say, oh, we're talking about Tories, but that is collectively stirring up hatred against all MPs. So it's inciting violence collectively. Um, like I say, you don't have to like members of parliament. You can peacefully protest against them, vote them out of office. There's a lot of ways to oppose them. But no, Johnny Marr, this is not oppression, keeping down artistic expression. It's entitled celebrities being held to account for running their mouth in support of a terrorist organisation. So to all those artists who support Kneecap, again, I say fuck you, because you are enabling this toxic narrative that somehow free expression means you can support the incitement of violence. That's a very dangerous message. That's how I feel about it. Anyway, I'll leave it there. But final point. I think this country is too tolerant. I don't think that anyone who expresses a hatred for the UK should be allowed a free platform in the UK. If they weren't from Northern Ireland, i.e., if they were citizens of the Republic, I think they should be blocked from entering the UK. But as I understand, we have agreements with the Republic of Ireland, visa free travel. But maybe we should toughen certain. Um, Maybe we should look at some of the legislation to see what we could do. I think there are too many people in this country who hate this country. I don't think that anyone who has a hostility to the UK deserves to be here. Um, and as for homegrown anti-British ideologues, they also need to be held to account because there is real world consequences for this. It's not just people running their mouth. There is actually real world consequences for this.